Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host right here,
Eddie Nicholas. What a beautiful people. Welcome to 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan. We're so glad that you came and decided to join us today. Mr. Cruz, what's going on in the world of music, etc., etc.?
Yes, it's all about the consolidation of powers, and today's episode is all about the last of the Mohicans, the last of the holdouts to get onto streaming services. But first, let us take a moment and let our listeners and our viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here to be your number one music business news and trends source, as well as giving you fantastic music tonight. Today, let's jump right into it. We're talking about AT&T. Here, we have one of the biggest phone companies in the States that over its tenure has really reinvented itself several times. Let's go way back into time for a moment. But I'm not surprised that my brother Eddie here knew the name of AT&T when it first started.
Oh, Bell Telephone.
Yes, Bell Telephone.
I go that far back.
Yes. Well, even before they became Bell Telephone, they were known as Bell System. They started in 1877. And what they did was they quickly became the leader of landline telephones. You couldn't have a phone without AT&T's involvement, especially at the turn of the century. And then we start to get through the civil rights movement and past that, and AT&T is still a big juggernaut. But what ended up happening over time, as most businesses have to do, they had to adjust in terms of dealing with the evolution of technology with respect to talking on the telephone. So what happened with AT&T is this. In short, without getting into the back and forth, there's a lot of layers to this. But as best as we can understand here, AT&T had some premonitions early on that they ignored. You see, AT&T, their biggest cash cow was the landline phone and the phone services that they offered. You remember there was a time where you would be charged per minute rates. You remember all that? Sign up with us, you get a certain amount of minutes per month. They were sort of the champion of that. That and compared to unlimited services. So all of that terminology, we have AT&T to thank for us knowing about these things. And it was basically their way of trying to make more money as time went on. So their shareholders and their higher-ups, if you will, had thought about what are we going to do with the ability to talk on the phone over the internet. Now, let me remind you, they were the king, AT&T, for landline phones. But now when you're talking about the internet, their shareholders were asking AT&T whether they were going to be ready to embrace VoIP. That's voice calling over the internet. Okay, so what ended up happening is they said, we still have our main cash cow. I don't think anything's going to change, really. And then lo and behold, everything changed. Now everything became about the internet. So AT&T decided to make sure that they were the leaders in satellite television and trying to get their cellular services up and running. But at this point, they slowly but surely were late in the game. There were other companies that sprouted that were sort of taking the first bite out of cellular servicing and going beyond that landline phone model that we've been talking about. So it's no surprise that AT&T, and not wanting to be left in the dust, had some adjustments that it needed to do. So let me give you the skinny. So leading up to the 2000s, they're still struggling. They're basically dead in the water. There were other companies that had come up and really had become leaders above and beyond AT&T.
Now, let me just ask one question. Sure. When all this started to occur, didn't it start to occur after Bell Telephone / AT&T was forced to dissolve some of its holdings because they started to become a juggernaut and started to become a monopoly?
Yes, so very good point, Eddie.
Is that antitrust
regulators,
or something like that?
Yes, regulators went after them for antitrust issues. In short, that means that the government was going after monopolies to say you can't operate in the way that you do because you're essentially making it so that there's not enough competition in the market. So you can't do the things that you were going to do as Bell Company. So they forced Bell Company to change and die down, basically, and diversify. And AT&T came out of that, right?
Thank you.
So now, when we're going to our new day and age, we have to consider cellular services. Landline phones are a thing of the past. Now things are about cellular and streaming and media via the internet. So AT&T, not wanting to be left behind, wanted to do several things to try to become the leader again in telecommunications. But today's climate is much different than 1877, as you can imagine. So they have to fight with regulators again. AT&T in 2011 started to acquire big companies. One of the biggest in 2011 was DirecTV.
Okay.
They bought a DirecTV for somewhere around $35 billion. And this was their attempt to become the leader in satellite servicing. You see, they didn't want that. They didn't want to be left out of the dark, because that was a big cash cow after landline phones went down the tube. Satellite services was very important to them. So they bought DirecTV for upwards of $35 billion. I know. Would it be?
When I hear that, I'm like, well, how much taxes are these corporations paying on that money? Because if you can pay out $35 billion, how much on a tax do you get off of that $35 billion? I didn't mean to digress, but when I hear those numbers, I'm like, these corporations spending that amount of money to acquire, what are they giving back into?
Well, it seems like they're not. I don't want to accuse AT&T or any juggernaut, but by and large, it seems that if you have a savvy enough team, an accounting team in place, and lawyers, you can find the tax loopholes that will mean that you pay as little tax as possible, and that's considered a business success. If you can find ways as a juggernaut to pay as little tax as possible, then that's working within the tax codes that exist. Proof positive is our current electoral process.
Don't you mention no names.
I'm not mentioning names. I will tell you this, that the biggest thing that's coming out of this election right now
they're going to
is
change them laws.
The tax code and how certain billionaires, millionaires are able to get over and paying very little, if no taxes at all, because they have found too their own talented legal teams to get over in terms of the tax codes. But the biggest thing is these aren't illegal maneuvers. These are tax codes that exist. We're going to take a break and come back, because AT&T is not done with buying up big companies.
No, they're not.
We're going to explain it more. And what does all this have to do with the music business? Stay tuned and find out.
91.6 FM, the heartbeat of today.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back, 91.6 FM. I'm one of your hosts, Eddie Nicholas, and I'm so glad to be joined by my fantastic, knowledgeable co-host,
Mr. Adam Cruz.
Yes.
We're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music business news.
Little tongue-tied right there.
I know, it's a lot to say. We are your
Yes.
number one source for music business news and trends from around the globe. Before we broke, we were talking about AT&T. Here in the States, AT&T is in the middle of buying huge companies. We were breaking down a bit of the history. In 2011, most recently, they bought DirecTV, a huge satellite provider, for upwards of $35 billion. Now in 2016, AT&T is not done. They just announced that they are in the middle of trying to acquire Time Warner, the biggest juggernaut there is for telecom, for a reported $85 billion. Let's break it down a little bit. So, if AT&T is to get through regulators, like we were talking about before the break, they are able to acquire Time Warner for $85 billion, in which case they will own Hulu, they will own HBO, they will own CNN, they will own the biggest satellite servicing in DirecTV, and on and on and on.
See, sounds like history is repeating itself.
Yes.
And
Well,
go
what is the- what is the
on,
hunch?
go on.
Okay,
finish,
so
go on and finish.
so now that they're buying all these services, regulators, they have to face the music with these regulators to say.
So they haven't bought it yet. This is
No.
just the proposal.
This is the announcement that they're interested
Okay.
in acquiring the deal. But what happened with AT&T is that they still have yet to go through regulators. All this is not finalized until the regulators say so. So what are they fighting regulators? The regulators want to fight the following. They want to say, hey, AT&T, the way we feel is that we want our content providers and our content distributors completely separate.
And and that reminds me back when they started with movies. The movie houses separate from the distributors.
Right.
So.
Well, because regulators cite conflict of interest, fiscally speaking. And we're talking about consolidation of powers here. So you want to keep that competition up so the prices don't spike. So regulators are arguing this very point to AT&T. Also, they will be arguing that if they were to buy this, that all of the pricing across the board will have to go up. AT&T is saying, nope, we're not going to raise the prices. As a matter of fact, when we launch DirecTV, now that we own it, AT&T, we'll launch it for customers at $35 a month, which is supposed to be very, very good pricing point if you're into satellite services. But AT&T is not just after satellite. They want that Spotify streaming. They want all of that money too. And the way they want it is they want it through that ad-supported network. You see, those conglomerates were making a lot of money in streaming music because they had ad-supported tiers, and all of that, along with subscriptions, made it possible for them to make a lot of money. So what you have now in AT&T is a consolidation of power. Their vision from the CEO is that they want all of the services that they offer to look like an HBO, a Netflix, all of the different platforms to have a look like that. Where all of the content's there, it's easy to find, and you can develop original programming. But this is a problem because regulators are saying we're trying to keep this separate, so you want to be a content creator and distribute it on your own. So they're saying that's going to be an issue. So I feel like this is a very worthwhile story. There's a lot to unpack here. For starters, I feel like this. If, God forbid, things don't go well for AT&T in this new move, somehow they start to cut out different departments and sections. Who do you think might get cut first? Because when you look at it, media like television programming, films, things like that tend to garner much more money than, say, music. So I wonder whether when you have a consolidation of power and they start to assess the value of all these sectors, where will music lie in that tier? And in the long term, where is music going to be when you give all the power to these conglomerates? Because you know that they're not trying to sell music. Music's like, we've read in various articles that music to these companies is considered like the lighter that you sell at a little grocery store at the counter. It represents like 1% of their overall market. So music's not the be-all, end-all. Really, media is a sort of umbrella term, if you will. What do you think about that?
And what you just said, music is just going to be a backdrop. Music is going to be exactly what people are viewing it as elevator music.
Well, we talked about how some of these outfits really were hoping that the exclusive model, where if you sign up with Apple, you could only get Eddie Nicholas. If you sign up for Tidal, you could only get Adam Cruz. They thought that was going to be the future, but as the numbers come back, they realize that that's not true either. But it hasn't stopped one more outfit from trying the exclusive model. Let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to break down more about AT&T and what's happening with some of these streaming services and what they're going to do next to get your dollar.
91.6 FM.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio, 91.6 FM, and on the web at dwildmusicradio.com. You're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. I'm here with my co-host, Eddie Nicholas.
What up, beautiful people?
Yes, we're having a great time here, breaking down some music business news. Before we broke, we were talking about AT&T. They're about to be the biggest telecom juggernaut there is if they're to have their way. But regulators want their way, which is they want content providers and content distributors to be separate. AT&T is trying to be together with all of that. Why? Because their vision is they want to be like HBO, Netflix, where everything's in one place and you can develop original programming. My argument before we broke was that where is music going to be in the plans? I argue that music generally is very much needed, but it's the first thing that we tend to ignore, because we feel like there are other things that we want to add more value to, like a film, like some sort of art project or something like that. But not the music itself tends to be a necessary thing that we tend to ignore as big companies. Why do we know that? Because we know that they are often trying to sell something else when they're providing music. They're not just showcasing music. Back in the day, they were trying to sell you an iPod, so they put the music on it. Now, In our new item right now, we want to talk about Amazon Music Unlimited. They were the last holdout. See, Amazon's trying to be like HBO and Netflix, and they want to develop films. They want to be award winning, if you will. So,
but again, that's under the Amazon umbrella. But I just want to say something real quick. Back, when we get to AT&T.
Yes.
I do firmly believe that with the changing climate and with us getting ready to go into office and start voting for people that are sitting in Congress and in office, all of that now, I really believe that AT&T may have a wall against them becoming a monopoly in that again, and I'm quite sure references to what was Bell Telephone are going to start popping back up again, again too. But
right.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, because
too.
I think the point is valid, which is you're making the point that regulators are frowning against these monopolies because they see what happens when the power is consolidated. But that's not unlike what we see in music. For example, over the summer, one of the biggest country music singers I can think of is Garth Brooks. He was one of the last holdouts. What do I mean? If you search him out on streaming services, you can't really find Garth Brooks' product.
Okay.
He had basically the ability to have his music owned on his own. Over the summer, he announced that he was separating from his latest label, RCA Records. They had released one album on him. It didn't do well. And he thought that it was time for him to separate and become independent.
Okay.
So his catalog became available at his website directly and only at his website. So you were thinking that, okay, Garth Brooks is going the way of independent musicians and developing his own website to have everybody go there. Smart move, right? And the other thing you realize is that he wasn't signed up with Apple Music or Tidal or any of them. See, by now, big name artists like Garth Brooks, they have been offered and have accepted deals already. Well, they're well into their streaming kinds of deals, where Garth Brooks had kept declining it. Why is Garth Brooks important? You see, he's the last of the big juggernauts.
Okay.
When his albums come out, they don't just sell 500,000, a million copies. They're often diamond selling albums.
It was Diamond.
Diamond is 10 million.
Is that beyond
copies.
platinum?
No, that's beyond platinum. That's 10 million copies or more, So he used that as leverage and held out for a while. There was talk that there was a $30 million deal on the table from Apple Music to offer that to Garth. And Garth didn't accept the deal, allegedly because they really wanted to offer his music on a per-track basis.
Okay.
Whereas he didn't want that. He wanted it to be offered as a bundle, only in these bundle situations. So there was a fight about that, and he didn't go with Apple. He announced that he's now signed with Amazon.
Okay.
So over the summer, he departs from RCA Records. He also announces that for physical product, he has a deal with Target, one of the biggest chains here in the U.S. So his music will be offered there physically, only at Target, and digitally only through Amazon.
And Amazon, from what I remember, they have their own little record, CD department and all of that type of stuff.
And they have a lot. But here's the thing that here's the red flag. The red flag for me is that Amazon recently has announced that in announcing the Amazon Music Unlimited service, they're going to cut the prices. Their pricing is, whereas Spotify's $10 a month, Amazon says they'll offer theirs at $9.99, $7.99 for a certain tier. And now if you buy their Echo speaker system, they'll offer streaming at $3.99 a month. You see, my point is that they are building a new business on the backs of musicians, but they're selling not music, but a product, a speaker in this case, the Echo system, where you can stream and enjoy this material anywhere in your home. This, I think, is a problem. We have to learn the lesson, which is that when we leave things in the hands of product makers like computer companies and others, we tend to end up getting the shortest end of the stick.
And the music most of the time is what gravitates people to the product.
Yes, and if you were Garth Brooks, I thought he was a holdout because he wanted more money. So I thought he would maybe side with like a Tidal. Why? Because you have Prince as a reference, who was like real savvy with royalties, and you think because Prince signed up with Tidal that Garth would follow and sign up with Tidal, but he hasn't. We're going to find out more. That's all the time we have today, but we want to break down more on what's happening with music copyrights, more of this consolidation of power, because I think there's a lot of news right now around these companies buying each other up, and there's only going to be, in America here, there's only about one or two broadband services provider when we talk about AT&T. And it's only a matter of time before these streaming services start to consolidate as well. See,
go ahead.
See, Tidal's already been in talks to be purchased by Apple. Apple denies it, but it's no saying that at some point or another, Spotify will be bought or will buy something else. AT&T will buy up all of them together, and then they'll be all under one umbrella. What were you going to say? I thought you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to tell folks, those of us in the United States, don't give up your landmines.
Exactly. Thanks so much for tuning in. Definitely check out EddieNicholas.com, DJAdamCruz.com for our own fantastic music. And definitely post under everything that we're posting at FreedomRadioHour.com. Let us know what you think. We'd like to hear from you. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead. We'll see you next time.
91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan.
And DWAPMusicRadio.com. Peace.